Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Parag Gad. This is Cone, a spin-off from UCLA, technology developed right here in our backyard.
The problem is solving is one that most people take for granted until it is an issue that you face yourself. Yes, we're talking about urinary incontinence. Good morning, everyone. My name is Parag Gad. I'm the co founder and CEO of SpineX. Urinary incontinence, while not a life threatening condition, has a significant impact on one's quality of life. Symptoms of OAB, or overactive bladder as it's also known as, include an increased frequency to urinate, a sudden urgency to urinate, which often leads to urine leakage. OAB impacts one's life in multiple ways, including reduced physical and sexual activities, reduced social interactions, impacts one psychologically, as well as an economical impact, including reduced work and increased medical expenses. There are about 33 million individuals in America suffering from overactive bladder. In addition, there are about 6 to 10 million individuals suffering from a unique condition known as neurogenic bladder, a condition secondary to neurological dysfunction such as a stroke, spinal cord injury, or multiple sclerosis. The current standard of care, as recommended by the American Urological Association, follows a four-pronged approach, beginning with behavioral therapies, second, medication, third, neuromodulation of the invasive and non-invasive types, and finally, augmentation surgery. Each of these therapies carry with them an increased costs and associated risks. While being partially effective, they all suffer from multiple limitations. Medications, for example, have significant side effects, leading to over 80% of individuals discontinuing medications. But more importantly, each of these methods are only treating the symptoms and not the underlying condition. Introducing SCONE, the world's first non invasive, non surgical treatment modality for urinary incontinence. By attaching hydrogen electrodes at specific levels of the back and sending in low intensity electrical pulses, SCONE retrains the neural circuits present in the spinal cord that constrain the intrinsic circuits controlling bladder function. Treatment protocol consists of 60-minute sessions twice a week for a period of 12 weeks. During the session, patients are free to read, sleep, listen to music, or work on a computer. Therapy is absolutely painless. Patients often describe it as a therapeutic massage. In our first in-human study conducted in 2020, we demonstrated a 11-point change in the neurogenic bladder symptom score, a metric of overall bladder health. This translated to a 70% reduction in incontinence episodes and a 40% reduction in voiding frequency. In our second feasibility study in patients with overactive bladder, we observed a similar decrease in urinary incontinence episodes within a period of 12 weeks. SCONE has been recognized by the FDA as a breakthrough device. Our initial regulatory pathway would be a de novo 510(k) treating patients with neurogenic lower urinary tract dysfunction. SpineX has been active since 2019. We have raised over $3 million in non-diluted funding through federal funding as well as agencies. We are currently closing a seed round for a total of about $3 million, which will support our first validation study as well as our de novo 510(k) submission. SCONE is a platform technology and is capable of addressing multiple unmet clinical needs, including children with cerebral palsy and recovery after paralysis. Our first in human studies in children with cerebral palsy demonstrated the ability for SCONE to train children how to take steps voluntarily in the presence of stimulation. Over the last 3 years, we have achieved some key milestones, including proof of concept studies in the neurogenic bladder and overactive bladder indications and children with cerebral palsy. We've done 2 runs of building our device with a research prototype called TestCon and our clinical MVP called SCONE. Clinical sites have been identified to conduct the clinical trial beginning in April 2022. We have a small but highly motivated team behind SpineX, led by Dr. Reggie Edgerton, considered as the father of spinal neuromodulation. Thus, we have a breakthrough technology capable of meeting unmet clinical needs for patients. The relatively low regulatory and financial hurdles and the non-availability of current therapies makes it a great opportunity for investors, patients, physicians, and reimbursement agencies alike. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions you have.
Just a quick question on the technology. Impressive demonstration of some of the data there. What is the durability of the effect that you've seen? What's the longest you've gone out after the 12 weeks to see that you still have treatment? And then how do you compare yourself to others who are using different approaches but also kind of neuromodulation?
So with respect to durability, after the first 12 weeks of therapy, we've seen a continued sustenance of improved bladder function for at least 1 to 3 months out. What we foresee as our potential clinical roadmap would be once patients have completed the 12 weeks of therapy, they may require maintenance therapy, which could be one or two sessions a month to maintain them at that same level. So the intensive therapy would be the first 3 months only. In terms of the cerebral palsy indication, we see a similar sustained effect, which is more of a neuroplasticity that's set into the brain and spinal cord. As long as they continue to do basic physical therapy, they're able to maintain that level for an extended period of time. In comparison to other neuromodulation therapies, we see two key differences. Our improvements are much greater. We see about a 70 to 90% reduction in continence episodes, whereas others have shown about a 50 to 60%, and a much higher responder rate, where we see about 90+ percent responder rate versus about 50% responders in current therapies.
Thank you. Impressive milestones. A question I have is, have you contemplated actually having this in outpatients?
Yes, so the first clinical pathway here is going to be an outpatient therapy, where it would either be in urology clinics or PM&R clinics, where patients would go in to receive therapy. The long-term vision is where we would have this made available at home, where patients would use it for a certain period of time and use it as maintenance thereafter. But yes, the first step is an outpatient approach.
On your, I was having trouble looking at all of your next steps because there were a lot of them on the slide. But on your sort of next steps, what do you see as sort of your key next hurdles, particularly I think for the cerebral palsy part of it?
Sure. So the next steps with CP, we have 2-3 key ongoing milestones. First is we just submitted a breakthrough device application demonstrating why this is a novel therapy. We're in the process of finalizing our clinical trial design and are hoping to have a pre-sub meeting with the FDA related to that sometime this summer. And of course, raising funds to conduct the actual trial. On the engineering front, the objective is to miniaturize this from size here to something that's about the size of a pager, so it'll be more feasible for children to be wearing for an extended period of time.
And have you guys thought yet into the reimbursement landscape over your regulatory, since you're a de novo device? How are you going to go through and get your coding and reimbursements for it?
Yes, we've begun engaging with reimbursement consultants related to that, specifically for the bladder indication. And as you can imagine, there are no codes that exist for a de novo pathway. And we'll be requiring HCIP codes down the road. And we've identified what that requirement is, two studies, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the 3 to 5 year timeline for us that we'll be engaging in. Thank you.